Hello, Cs. Welcome back to the Other Side of Dreams podcast. I am your sister, walking with you through the seasons of reinventions and growth. I'm still on the journey too, but I've walked far enough to see what is possible. This is where midlife women rise, rediscover purpose, and build what's next. And if I can do it, so you can. Quick housekeeping. What I'm sharing here is from my life experiences and what I've learned along the way. This is not a therapy. And if you need help, please seek a professional support when you need it. Before we dive in, I want you to take a deep breath for a second. Because you don't need to prepare and you don't need to make any repairs today. Just be present. Because this episode is the beginning of something important. Episode 11 starts a 5-part series called Lesson We Learned Too Late. These are not a dramatic lesson, and these are not loud mistakes. These are the quiet realizations that usually comes in midlife. When the kids are older, when the body is more tired, and when money feels heavier, and when the roles started shifting. These are the things that no one sat us down and explained. The things we were too busy surviving to notice. And now we're noticing. This first part, Series 1, is about a lesson many women learn quietly. That working harder does not always protect you. And that responsibility, if never questioned, can slowly becomes a trap. We're not blaming ourselves and we're not blaming our past because clarity is power and power at this age is calm, not loud. And over the next episodes, we're going to talk about the identity we built around being needed and the money fears we never said out loud and the cost of always being the reliable one, and the illusions of the invisible safety net, and how to reset before panic forces you to. This is not about regret, it's about awareness. And awareness is where dignity begins. So today, we start gently, but we start honesty. But let me warn you before we begin. This is not a "you're doing amazing, sweetie" episode. There are no gold star here and no violin music swelling in the background. This is the episode I wish someone had the nerve to say to me years ago. Before, I was functioning perfectly every day, but feeling empty inside. And before resentment quietly moved into my chest and started paying rent. So, if you're listening right now while folding laundry or driving to work or sitting in your kitchen staring at nothing and thinking, is this really it? Yeah, this one is for you. And welcome to the lesson we learn too late. And today's lesson, No one was coming to save you, not then and not now. And the hardest part isn't that no one came, it's that many of us were quietly waiting for something we never told we had to build ourselves. Because somewhere along the way, many of us were taught this quiet fantasy. If I'm patient, if I'm good, if I sacrifice enough, someone will notice and someone will step in and someone will take care of me. So you waited. You waited through exhaustion, through being overlooked, through holding everything together like duct tape on a collapsing wall. And you told yourself, this is just a season. And that season turned into decade. And no one tapped you on your shoulder and said, you've done enough and now it's your turn. And here's the part that stings. You didn't fail because you believe a story that was never true. Let me confess something that I don't love admitting. I waited longer than I should have, and I keep hoping someone would finally notice how much I was carrying. And I told myself I was being patient. But if I'm honest, I was afraid to choose myself because choosing yourself feels selfish. And when you've been trained to survive on crumbs, when you finally see that clearly, you start questioning everything you were taught about love. We were taught that giving more would make us more lovable, but it didn't. Some people don't see sacrifice as love, they see it as a convenience, and you weren't admired for being strong. You were relied on because you didn't complain. And you are the emotional emergency fund. And you are the family shock absorber, the unpaid therapist, and the 24-hour hotline with no closing hours. And when you finally slow down, people didn't thank you. They got uncomfortable and they notice you and ask, how come you're different now? And why are you no longer as available as before? Let's be honest. Some of us didn't burn out. We slowly evaporated, like steam rising off a pot, and still cooking and still serving, just disappearing a little more each year. And we called that strength. If love only worked when you disappeared inside it, it wasn't love. It was endurance. And endurance is not the same thing as intimacy. And disappearing doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence. This one is quieter because it's not about what they did, it's about what we didn't say. Because silence was praised in you. They called it strength, and they call it maturity, and they call it she handles everything. But silence trained people to believe you did not need care, and you will always adjust, and your needs were optional. And you became the house that never locked its doors. It's always open, always available. And then, one day, you look around and thought, why does no one check on me? Because you trained them not to. And that doesn't make you foolish, it makes you conditioned. Let me ask you something. When was the last time that someone asked you how you were doing? If that question made you uncomfortable, that's not a weakness, that's an awareness. And awareness always leads us somewhere deeper. And let's go there. And once you see that, once you realize how long you've been carrying everything quietly, you start to understand why certain transitions feels heavier than they should, especially the one no one prepared us for. And if you can't remember, that tells you something about how long you've been carrying yourself alone, especially in the seasons where you were needed the most. This is where guilt tries to sneak in. Stay with me here. Your children were not born to repay you, not emotionally, not financially, and not by staying small so you could stay needed. You raised them to live. But when a woman builds her entire identity around being needed, she feels abandoned when that season ends. And that's not because she is dramatic. It's because no one prepared her for the transition. If your entire sense of purpose disappear when your children grew up, the problem wasn't them leaving you. It was that you were taught to disappear for them. The truths, it hurts, but it's also unlocked something powerful. You are still here and you are not done. And once you start seeing all of this clearly, and once you realize how much of yourselves you've been carrying quietly, something begins to shift. And when you shift, not everyone is comfortable. And let's talk about that. This one might make you uncomfortable. You are allowed to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. And when you set boundaries, they say you've changed. And when you choose yourself, they call it selfish. Growth feels like betrayal to people who prepared you exhausted. But here's the metaphor I want you to hold. If you've been shrinking for years to fit inside someone else's comfort zone, of course, it feels disruptive when you finally stand up straight. That's not a rebellion. That's a spinal alignment. And you don't need permission. You need courage. And if that feels uncomfortable, when you've lived years on autopilot, the first moment of clarity feels like turbulence. But turbulence doesn't mean the plane is crashing. It means you're changing the altitude. Because midlife is not a breakdown, it's a wake up. It's the moment when pretending stops working and when the old stories don't comfort you anymore. And when the lie of someone will come rescue me expire. Because midlife is the season when awareness gets louder than the fear. And awareness can feel brutal. But it's also the beginning of sovereignty. No cape is coming. No hero soundtrack is playing. And you are the main characters now. And that's not a punishment. That's your power. So, if this season feels louder than the ones before, it's because something in you is finally asking to be heard. And before we close today, I want to leave you with something simple. If your life stays exactly the same for the next 5 years, same routines, same silence, same expectations, will you still recognize yourself? No fixing today, no pressure, just honesty. Because honesty is where freedom starts. So, this episode is called Lesson We Learned Too Late. Not to shame you, but to free you. Awareness coming late is still awareness, and that's enough to begin. Thank you for being here today. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow the shows and share it with a woman who needs it. And if you have a story or topic in your heart, reach out. This space is open.